Okay, so let's go to our scene breakdown for today. And let me open it up here. Just open the main image. And I'm doing this courtesy architect Moses. He chips this in one of our classes. So I decided to open up the scene again and see if we can do a breakdown for it. So we're working on this scene. I'm going to show you everything that went on. The lighting, some key materials, really just the flooring, because most of the other materials came in pre-made, though there were some adjustments made to them. Problem is, can't remember every single adjustment made to every material, so I can give you the breakdown mostly for the flooring, because that contributes a lot to how the lighting looks, so there's that. The general scene layout, things that are going on behind the camera that you may not be seeing, and all those things that really makes the scene and the image come together. We'll be exploring them today. So this is one image from a wider project. The project had a number of renders in it. I'm sure you must have seen some of these before, right? But this was just like one interior from the building.
Yeah.
So let's go in. Okay. So here's what it got. Let me show you the general overview of the scene so you see what's going on. Now, it's not in all cases that you would have to use the entire building model. It's just we had already done some work on the environment for the exterior. So some work had already been done here. The pool area had been populated to some degree. The planting in the surrounding. So in a bid to keep that, because some of those things we're going to would show up in this view. So it just made sense to use the building model. In some cases, if you don't have this much context showing up, you can just create that space in isolation and work on it if you don't have this much context showing inside the scene. So you could just make this in isolation and basically work on it in a way that would not be too inconvenient, one, and too heavy for your computer. But in this case, we didn't want to do that because we had this context showing and we're not really limited or constrained in terms of PC power. So I'm able to. So you see that most of the population is happening here. We've got a building this way, we've got a bunch of trees this way at different intervals and distances. So what that does is that it creates some kind of depth and layering. So if I zoom in this way, you see that building is right here. It's not showing up much, but it's just enough to create a sense of place, sense of environment in the render. So things like that, very important. You don't need what you put in there to cover the entire background, but just having them in key positions could create a sense of place and a sense of environment in a render.
Yeah.
So that's the basic background setting for this. If you go to the model itself, let me come in here. You see that there's not so much going on in this space. There's not so much going on. Basically, everything that you're seeing here is what we're seeing inside the scene. So most of the objects were placed strategically for the camera because we're not doing more than one shot here. So there was no real need to expand and build up the areas that would not be captured or that would not have some kind of effect on maybe some the reflective areas or things like that. So there was no real need. So it was just on a need to basis. Most of the population was done on a need to basis. If I go back into the scene again, one of the reasons why you would find it appealing is not just the rendering, it's also the design. So when people are perceiving images, they are not perceiving the image like a render, so they're not looking at it from a 3D point of view, right? What they are looking at is, does this thing look beautiful to look at? And design choices play a major role. The kind of colors you choose, how you choose to harmonize the colors, the kind of shapes that you choose and how those shapes repeat in the entire design scheme. So there is a world where having good design sense already solves major parts of, my render is not looking good enough, especially for interior situations, especially interior. For exterior, because you have a lot of context going on in exterior, you've got road, you've got trees, you've got a lot of plants, you've got surrounding buildings. Design also is important, but not quite as crucial. You need to be able to nail down the realism in an exterior situation much more. Select very good quality models, make very good quality materials, because it's so expansive that it's so expansive that a nice design alone will not save you. But in an interior situation, even if your render doesn't look all the way realistic and all the way crazy, if you have a good design, it can still hold it down to an extent. So for interiors, design choice is extremely important. The colors that you choose. So if you look at this scene, for instance, you can see this fluency in terms of the color. There's some kind of harmonization and a repetition in terms of the colors. The gold accents, got one here, another here, another here, on the clock, on this guy, and on the vase here. So it spreads across the image. And the gold accents also tie to the wood accents too. So it's kind of like a slight shift in the colors, right? Also the wood accents here. And then we contrast that with the warmer tones in a sense. So we've got so we've got this here. So we've got some tones that are closer to brown now. So there's kind of like a brownish, brown versus white with black accents thing going on. And in the brown region, you've got the gold, which you can't call brown, but we can say along that spectrum. You've got the gold there, you've got the wood in the floor also. You've got even the carpet here and the chairs, just different shades of them punctuating the scene. And then white as the canvas. So we have a lot of white in the scene. White is the main canvas, and then we are painting all these colors, different shades of them inside the scene. And then we've got black to create that jarring accent. So we've got black on the chairs, we've got black on this guy, we've got black here. So those colors basically repeating all through the scene, and the forms too. And for the forms, we've got two major kinds of forms. We've got the straight or square forms, and then you've got the circular one. So you would notice that the choice of using this kind of chandelier here also ties into the choice of this lamp here. So the kind of reference, exactly, and the chairs too. It also ties into the choice of the chairs. So those forms begin to reference each other. Same thing with the slight curve you've got on this, and on this, and on the pot, So that referencing, exactly, the artwork. So that referencing happens all through the scene. And what it does for you is that it helps your scene to feel much more balanced when you have that kind of referencing going on. So we've got two major kinds of forms. The square forms, the dining table is square, the carpet is square, this guy is square, that's the console here. This wall, the artworks themselves are square, but we now have that shift and that balance with the more roundish forms in the scene. So the colors, the forms play a huge role. This has nothing to do with your rendering at all. Nothing to do with marks. It's just what kind of colors do I want in here. And why rendering is so powerful is that you get to see how these choices affect the design of your scene in real time. There are times that if you're trying to make design choices off the top of your head without any real feedback in time, it's a bit difficult. So you would find out that it becomes much simpler for you to make these choices when you're already trying to create the render. You can tell what furniture is working, what color is working, what forms are working, and the materials that come with them. Because the form is not, the form is not in isolation by itself. The form comes with a material. So does that form and the material it comes in, do they really work well with the entire scene, or do they not? So it's easy for you to see all those things in real time when you're rendering.
Yes.
A couple of things too, as it has to do with the composition. You can tell that this is supposed to be our main area in a sense. The area behind here is supposed to give us some context. the background to some context, but this is our main area. The dining area is what we're supposed to be looking at. And one of the key things that's happening here is we've tried to frame this scene in a number of ways. There are some framing elements that are very obvious, and I'll point them out. This statue is one of them. Right here, it feels more like a barrier of some sort. So the curtain and then the statue here feels like a bit of a barrier, making sure that you don't wander too far into this extreme of the image. And the statue also facing inward actually does something. If we had turned this statue the other way, it begins to draw you out because this is like a human figure. So let's see. So we have this here. If we were to change the direction and just rotate this way, all of a sudden you begin to get the sense of what's this figure looking at. It's not even have that kind of conversation or argument. It's inside this way. So if you look at this, we've got some kind of barrier on this end. And what we've done is to create another kind of barrier here. And it was done with two things. One, this plant, and the second, this lamp. So what it does is that you've got a barrier here, another one here, making sure that you don't really have to explore this area much. We're trying to keep this area as obscure as possible because we want all focus to be on this picture, right? So we've done that by the barrier with the curtain and the lady statue, and then the plant and this lamp. And we have a very huge expanse here, creating some kind of contrast, on this wall. Also gives us some expansivity, makes it easy for us to stretch the image a bit, the heavy contrast we have here. And the choice of this painting at the back is to reference this just a little bit because we don't want too much attention here, but we still want some kind of attention. The same color we have here is showing up on this area, stretching the scene a bit further for us to appreciate that there's something going on at the back here and be curious enough to want to know, but not give us too much contrast or too much information to draw us into that area. So these are the choices that, you would need to make. And many of them, what you find is that you're experimenting to make them. It's not very common that you would have everything laid out when you start the render. That hardly ever happens. What happens usually is that you will have a general idea, maybe from your reference, right? Or from from the intention that you have for the image itself. And then you will start building. So you will find yourself chopping and changing a lot. It happens. It's very natural for you to get the exact kind of balance you're looking for. You would chop and change a lot. You would experiment a lot. You would look for the right color, the right shape, the right kind of model, all those things. You will do them. And that's what really takes the time, right? That's what takes time in the entire process. But I welcome that approach to working, not just because it takes time and I just like doing things the hard way. It's not really because of that, but because it helps you to be more involved in the project, one. And when you are involved in something that deeply, it causes you to focus a lot more. It causes you to have to battle with frustration and reward a lot more. Generally, why I do it is just we live in a time where we're trying to dissociate ourselves from training our minds as much as possible. And I'm sure you'd have an idea of what I'm talking about. Information is being fed to you on a steady through social media. You're scrolling and information at your fingertips was supposed to be a good thing. And it's a good thing in a way. But what it's doing to us is that it's making us less and less capable of engaging our minds on difficult tasks. In fact, it's almost trying to say to us that, don't worry, you don't need your mind. Just let these tools do everything for you. But you do. You need your mind. Trust me. So there are times that there might be some proposed simpler way to do things, but it's good to find things that still help you engage your mind. Most of us don't have the opportunity to read as much as we would like to, which I think we should be doing. But if you can find a way to engage your mind, even if it's in rendering, just do something in a way that might be considered inconvenient. Find a way to put it in. It's like when you work out, right? When we, I would say before technology and before advancement, we didn't need to create special workout sessions. You go to the farm in the morning and you're back, and trust me, you've already worked out enough for an entire day. But because we now have this lifestyle where we drive in cars, sit down at offices, we now have to intentionally look for time and space
On the
to.
treadmill.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have to do treadmill and we have to do all those things, which are not bad actually. In fact, I think they are pretty good. It's a way to force yourself to still keep your body fit, even though your lifestyle, by definition, is not helping you. So it's the same thing for your mind. There are way too many tools out there these days that try to take the responsibility and be like, don't worry, we'll handle it. Just click a few buttons and you'll be there. But I feel like it's important for every human being to still find ways. The way we try to find time to work out our body, let's find
Yes.
time and space to work out our minds too. And 3D, especially doing it this way, helps you a lot with that. It helps to keep your mind sharp a lot. So
Yeah.
that's my reason. When people ask me, can't we find a much easier way? I'm like, yes, that's the truth. There are things that you can do that can be much easier, but also try to intentionally integrate difficulty into your life. Like this kind of difficulty, of course, not
Not, not hardship.
exactly.
Very
Exactly
correct.
not. So something like this where it's not very high stakes per se, but it stresses your mind a bit. So what you will find is that you're spending time doing iteration, you're spending time seeing if it works, you're questioning your judgment, you're being frustrated, and when you get it right, you feel very rewarded. It helps you keep focus for a long period, which is something that we'll be needing going forward as human beings. Trust me, we will need it. So the process can feel daunting, but I think you should embrace it as part of making yourself better. Okay, so I've gone on a very long rant and tangent, but we still have time. We have about 39 minutes, and I think that should be enough time for us to break down this scene. So, what I've done in this first part is to just give you the general idea, general overview, general compositional idea too behind it. But now we're going to do a lighting breakdown. I'm going to show you how this light was built from ground up. So, I have this scene, it's been stripped of lighting. Let me confirm that. Okay, so it's been stripped of lighting. There's no light in the scene, and we're going to start it from scratch. So you see how it was built, and you see what was done in here. So for this scene, I'm going to bring in the HDRI that was used. It was lit with the HDRI, only HDRI. And the reason why that worked so well is because, of course, we have a lot of opening. The opening is not very direct in the sense of it's not facing the exterior directly. We still have this part of the building and this part of the building that could be blocking out some light, but generally the opening is wide enough and it's not too obstructed also. So we're able to get a good amount of light inside the space. So for the HDRI, I'm using one that you have. It's in the library. So there's this Peter Guthrie HDRI library, different from the one we've used before now. So let me just show you where it is. So let's go to. So yeah, there's this Peter Guthrie Sky Collection HDRI. There's a PG Skies Volume 5. This one is newer. And there's this Peter Guthrie Sky HDRI collection. Peter Guthrie is one of the, they say GOATs, right? Is one of the greatest influences in architectural visualization. He runs a studio called The Boundary. But when he was still doing visuals, some 7, 8, 10 years ago, he was one of the guys that I really looked up to. Very, very good work, as an artist. And he created these HDRI bundles at the time. So I downloaded this. Then this was the earlier set. This one was the earlier set. And he had this Overcast Sun HDRI. So this one, if you look at it, you can see that, let me see extra large icons. If you look at it, you can see that it has a hotspot. So generally, if the HDRI has a hotspot like this, chances are you would get more defined shadows to some extent in your render. So that's why I like this one. It has a downside, but I'll show you how we overcome that. So I'm going to bring in the HDRI and I'm going to bring in the HDR file, right? So let's bring that in. Okay. Can everybody hear me? Is everybody following me?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Let me see how many people we have still with us. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to plug this into environment as an instance, and let's start our work from there. Let me close up Photoshop. Okay. So this is everything at default mode now. I've just brought in the HDRI, no changes to the HDRI whatsoever. And I'm going to start an interactive render. So let's see where we're at. And I'm still not getting any. Okay, yeah. All right, so this is what it looks like with nothing changed here. So right here, I have the default settings from 3ds Max, right? It just looks something like this, everything default. One thing that I would like to do is first turn off ACAS because I don't want what it offers. I think the scene could be brighter, so I'm going to just take up my exposure. Let's see what 1 looks like. Okay, so it's brighter. So I've turned off ACAS, taking my exposure up to 1. It's not bad. Before I do any further changes, I'll just keep it here for now. One thing that I know for sure is I've got a lot of overexposure, especially outside, as you can see. So for that, I would bring in a highlight compression, Reinhardt precisely. And let's go with maybe 6, 7. I need something high here. For many interiors that have this kind of lighting, Reinhardt is usually just much better. It would remove and kill some of your vibrance and contrast, but I could always restore that in post. So I'll use Reinhardt here. So let me go 8. Okay, so now we don't have all that overexposure, but it looks very dull. So to restore that nice feeling, right? To restore that beautiful contrast and vibrance and everything, we can rely this time on our LUT. So we can find an LUT that can take this and transform it into something completely different. So let me save this in history first so that you see just how powerful the LUTs are. So generally what I do is before the LUT, the goal is to have an image or to have a render that looks dull, something like this. Dull, not heavy on contrast. Now that I look at it, maybe this material should actually even be brighter, but hey. But something dull, not heavy on contrast, is always a good place to start, and then you can let the LUT build that for you fully. But something I noticed here, before I even add the LUT, let me just check out the lighting first. Let me be sure that the general color of the light is fine. So I've done a save, but there's something that I've noticed, and I can see that. You may not be able to see it the first time, but because I've worked with the HDRI for a while, I can see that there's a little color cast on my whites. My whites don't feel as white as they should. I'm expecting more whiteness, but I'm getting a little bit of some pinkish magenta color cast on this white here. Can you see it too?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's because the map I'm using, if I zoom in this way, you can see that it's got some colors. So basically every color here will find its way into my scene. So I'm guessing that part of these colors here are what I'm seeing inside the scene. So what I want to do is I want to desaturate this so that it gives me a nice neutral light. I'm going to desaturate right here, and I'm just going to run down the saturation. I don't want the saturation to be like complete, so I'm just going to take it to like 0.75. There's this fly. 0.75, so that it doesn't get desaturated completely. Let it still have some semblance of color, because I mean, if this was real life too, the environment will not be completely desaturated. It will still have some semblance of color. So I'm just going to keep it at minus 0.75, and I would need to update this now in here. So instance. Okay. So if we do a little comparison, let's allow this clear out a bit. So you can see that we've swapped that magenta feel with something that looks slightly warmer, right? So we have this bluish magenta tint to it, but this one has a much warmer feel, which kind of aligns with the colors in my scene. We're not completely done with this yet. There's still an LUT coming, there's still post-production, but this is more in the direction of what I want than what we had before. So there's still some slight color tint here, but I don't think I mind that. This one I didn't like at all because it's far away from where I want to go. I want the place to look warm, vibrant, and this is closer. There's still some green in this, but you know, by the time we put the LUT and we do some other things, we can get rid of that. Or we could even just reduce the saturation of this completely, but I don't want to go extreme now. So let me save here and let's add an LUT to this. Okay, for these kind of scenes where you've got these kind of colors, a lot of brightness in the space, Kim Amland always does the trick, especially for that kind of look. So the LUT you choose is usually based, or that decision is usually based on the kind of look that you're going for. If you're going for something like this, heavily contrasty, really vibrant, colors really pop, then you'll be looking to Kim Amlan. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to scroll all the way down. So this is version 1. This is version 2, much brighter. Version 3 is a bit different from version 2, but you can see that now we're getting much closer to where we're supposed to be. We have the colors here are looking right. We're getting that vibrance in the image. And this is what it does. It takes it from this all the way to this. So you can see that it makes a really huge change in the work. The colors seem to pop a lot more. See the colors on this, colors on the flooring. They seem to pop a lot more with this particular LUT. So the choice of LUT, like I said, is heavily based on the reference, what you want at the end of the day. So now that we've done that, I want to check for a few things. Because I know that this HDRI I have has a hotspot, somewhere the light is coming from, maybe a little rotation can help. Perhaps we can get a little bit more light inside this space. So let me save this. And let's go to rotation. So let's see minus 30. Does it make for a brighter scene or no? Does it even make any change at all? So sometimes you might want to do this. Just rotate the HDRI a bit. You may not be sure what you would find, but it definitely does help. It gives you fresh perspective. So eventually, what was used here was minus 90. It got in a bit more light into the scene than the default, just a little bit more, but that was enough for me to choose it. So let's allow it clear out a bit and we can do a slight comparison. Okay. Let's give it a little bit of time. Okay. So this one seems to be getting a little bit more light into the scene. The general brightness of the scene seems to go up, not by so much, but just enough. And it gives me some nice highlights on this sculpture here. the general mood just feels a little bit more lifted, which is what I'm going for. I'm going for really bright, really airy. So that rotation helps in that respect. So you can see these are the changes. These things were the result of many experiments, really. It's just that now I'm summarizing it in a sense. I didn't accomplish all this in one go. I just click this button, click that, and everything worked out. It was actually a lot of experiments till the point of doing the final render. You still be tweaking a few things here and there to get the kind of shot that you want. So let me save this, and I'll show you something crucial in this also. So let me just pull this here. So there's a little bit of something I call light sculpting going on. Let me stop the interactive render. I believe we should be able to start it without any issues. So let me stop it so we can check the scene properly. So this is what the scene looks like, right? In front here, we have a lot of glazing, and we've got glazing also here. But if you check here, there's something happening now. You see this lineup of curtains at the back right here. Now that's not part of the design. It was done to sculpt light in some way. So if you look at the final image and you look at the way this scene is set up, what you would have had is you would have had a lot of light coming from the other side trying to compete with the light coming from this side. What that does is it creates some kind of flatness. Of course, the scene gets brighter, but you see these dark shadows we have that help us to accentuate the curves on this chair. They will be almost eradicated. And I will show you so that it doesn't feel like we're just saying it. So the idea of doing these things sometimes is to just help you sculpt the shapes in your scene much better. The scene will not look as bright, but it would have there will be a solidity and depth about the scene when you do those things. So let's see what would have happened if we didn't have those curtains. Now you can see that the color of the curtains themselves. Let's click. Okay, so let me hide this temporarily. And let's do an interactive render. Yes, is there a question?
No question, just a contribution. That helps the light source to come from one, the light to come from one source instead of having multiple sources of light.
Sources, yes. So it just streamlines it here, and on the other side of it, you're able to get more shadows. But let's see how it plays out so that you can see the difference between both. And this is something that you can do in your scenes also. There are times when you may even already have a wall on the other side, but maybe that wall is very white and it's bouncing light a lot. I'll show you a scene where that was done. You would probably not guess, but let me show you what happened. So this scene, for instance, yeah. So you see the shade that you can find, this nice shade that really helps to accentuate this chair and close it out. It wasn't there by default, right? So what happened was that there was a plane. In fact, this time it wasn't even a curtain. It was just a plane. Okay. So it was just a plane that was placed behind the camera. Now this plane had a little bit of some dark gray color. Because of that, it wasn't able to bounce light back up here. So we're able to get nice shadow here, and here, and that adds a lot of depth to your scene. It makes it feel like you can hold it and touch it, right? It gives a tridimensionality. It makes it feel more three-dimensional when you have that sculpting. So that's something that you can seek to add to your scenes as much as you can. So if you look at this, it's not like this is terrible or bad or anything, but we're able to see the definition of the chairs much better on this one than here. Here, we've got lighting from both sides. Not horrible, not bad, but this one just has more depth. This one helps us focus on this area a lot more because now what we have is light coming in from the front and sculpting here from the back. So the idea of creating lighting too is not just letting light reach everywhere. It's also trying to see how you can stop light from reaching some places so that you get more depth. So if you check the sides of these columns here, you see that it feels bright here, but here we're able to get more shade around it. And because of that, the shapes feel much more defined in them. So this one, we have loads of light. This one, much less, but more definition. So that's something to think about, and it's something to add to your scene. It makes it look much, much better, much easier to look at, because focus is much more clearly defined than when you let light come in from every possible angle. So I hope that helps. I hope you picked up something from that.
Yes.
Okay. So let me unhide all. It's only Architect Moses talking. Every other person, are you sure you all can hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
All right. I just had to be sure. Okay. So let's allow it clear out a bit, and I'll show you part of what was done in post also. Okay, so let's just give it a moment.
I think Rahama is asking a question.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. What section? Okay, so there should be a section that you have access to. I'm thinking it's how I made. Now, this kind of content usually goes to how I made. If you check your dashboard, you should find how I made there. So this sort of stuff goes to how I made. Okay, so let me just let it clear out a bit. Okay. Yeah. So generally, you can add a little curve. Let's add some curves in here just to get. I could do this in post also, but sometimes it's just fun to do it in render. So this, make sure that it's not too extreme, but it just gives us more vibrance, right? So this is pretty much the setup for this entire scene. The one thing that was done on the material level, which I need to show you, is, as I was saying, when I have spaces like this, we have this wood finish and all, I try to not let the colors from the wood affect the space, right? So I can get a more neutral feel in the entire space. So you can see that it's a simple wood material. The only thing there is I had to desaturate it a bit. So I have the wood texture itself, its ambient occlusion map, and I added that. Now, the way I showed you to do it was to add it into Corona Mix. As at this time, I wasn't using Corona Mix yet. I was using something called Composite. So this Composite is similar to Corona Mix. It's just that it actually has more capacity in the sense of it can let you mix more than two maps together, but it's similar to Corona Mix. So you can see that this is the ambient occlusion layer blended on multiply mode right here. So with this, I can add like 10 layers and mix them all, but you generally don't need to mix more than two most times, right? So this is Composite. You can find it here, Maps, General. So this one is a 3ds Max map. It's not a Corona map. So this is a Composite. You can add a new layer and a new layer and a new layer and a new layer and just keep adding to mix maps together. But just make sure that you get the blending mode correctly for you to get the kind of mix you're looking for. So that was sent into a color correct. The color correct was meant to desaturate the map a bit because I didn't want the floor to feel saturated. I wanted more desaturation on the floor than what the original map gave. Now, the ray switch, this is where the ray switch was introduced. The ray switch, like I said, is to help you make sure that you're not getting secondary bounces from the floor. So the light isn't carrying colors from the floor and spreading it on the walls. So you can see that the main material or the main map went into reflect, refract, and direct override. But the ray switch one, which is the same map but desaturated, goes into global illumination. So that secondary bounce caused by the global illumination will not carry the warm color of the floor. It will just carry this neutral bounce, which helps my scene color look the way it should. So in the material itself, I have a Fresnel IOR. This is a legacy material, by the way. This was before I started using physical material back then. So this is Corona Legacy, but the only thing that was done there is we have a Fresnel IOR of 1.65, and that just helps the floor feel a bit more reflective. You know, it had a bit more shine to it than the usual. The usual is 1.52, so 1.65 gives a little bit more shine. It takes it closer to metallic in a way, but of course not metallic, but just a little bit more shine. Gloss map in there, and of course the normal map. So nothing crazy. The only thing that was a bit different here is the Corona ray switch to make sure that we don't have that warm bounce from the floor onto the walls. I hope that's clear. Is that clear? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. So one last thing here is the highlight compression. Because of just how much detail I'm missing outside, the highlight compression I took all the way to 99. So that just kills almost every possible highlight. Now, what I must do now is I might need to work a bit in post to get some details back. But generally, because the focus is on the interior, most of the areas here don't seem affected. So depending on the kind of LUT you're using, the LUT in this case has a lot of highlights in there. So I can afford to go as high as 99 on my highlight compress to just kill every possible kind of every possible overexposure in the scene. And then the LUT just raises it all the way back up. So this is what it looks like before the LUT highlight compress of 99. So I don't have any kind of overexposure really. And then this can now take it up. So that's what was done in this case. And in many interiors, if you're going to be using this kind of LUT, you can compress your highlights all the way so that you don't have overexposure. So that's pretty much the setup for this scene. Something was done in post-production, but nothing major. I'll just show you that one thing. And that's on the exterior. So when this was rendered out, some loss of detail on the exterior wanted to recover. So let me show you how that was done. I'm just going to open up the Photoshop file here. Okay. So there's a bunch of things done, the same workflow like I explained before. I have a camera raw. Inside the camera raw, let me see what was done. Okay, so color, I made it a little less warm. So I took the temperature a bit to the blue end. In the effects, I added some texture and clarity. In the, it says something was done here, but I can't see. So I don't think anything was done in this category. That was pretty much it for this. Added the reflection layer at 25% to just add a little bit of extra sheen in there. A little bit of curves in there. And this is for the exterior part. So this was it before, and this is it now, right? I'll show you what was done there. So let me close this so that you get what was done. So from 3ds Max, I'll show you how to create an alpha channel like this. So what I have, if I go to my render elements and I go to mask, what I have done is to select this glass and let it render out as a mask. And I'm going to show you how that is done. So let me go to render setup. So I'm going to go to render elements and let me delete all these guys. Okay, so what I want to do is, because my alpha channel, right? If I have an alpha channel here, my alpha channel makes it very difficult for me to select everything behind the glass, because what I really want is, I want to be able to control the intensity of all objects behind the glass, because my exterior was looking extremely overexposed, right? And that was the problem, really. So what I can do in this case, instead of using the alpha channel, I can create a mask out of the glass itself. So I'm going to go to add, and I'm going to go to C masking mask. And what I want is for it to create a black and white mask. So I'm going to come over to this monochromatic mode. That's what it does. It gives me a black and white mask. And I'll click on manual selection. I would make sure that I have my glass materials or glass object selected. And I'm going to hit the plus sign, right? So it has selected one object, and that is my glass now. So when I render that, it would add a render element like this. So you can see that I've got the glass now. So I can use this as a mask in Photoshop, so that if I do a correction, maybe curves, maybe I reduce exposure or reduce brightness, I can limit that to the area here, so that it affects everything that is visible as the exterior in this scene. Is that clear? Do we get the idea? Do you understand what I'm trying to do?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I have a simple question. Is it possible to add a render element after rendering and still get it, or you have to re-render?
You have to re-render, but there are some, but there's a way to do it without going through the pain. And that's just for masks though, because if you have to do like reflection, reflection, you have to render the entire thing for you to get your reflection pass. But if it's a mask, you can, there's a little bit of a workaround you can do here. So you can come into scene. It's been a long time I did this, so I hope I remember. Let's see. Okay, good. I think it's this. Render selected, is it? Yeah, I think this is it actually. So render selected, basically what you can do for you is, if I make a selection, so let's say I forgot to render the mask for this glass, I can then say render selected, viewport selection, and just select this. It would only render this glass, right? And I would have gone to already add my mask here. So the render itself will be very fast, but I can now save out the mask from that. So that only works mostly for things like masks, things that don't really have very heavy implication. But if you want to render something that requires your entire scene, like a reflection pass, there's really not much you can do. You have to render the entire scene. If you want a Z depth, you don't need to have all the colors and materials showing up. So you could just do a material override version where everything is rendered as white, and then you can add the Z depths to that and it would render. But the key thing is that you always need to do a rendering before you can get the render elements. Like something has to render for that to happen. So I hope you get that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so let's go back into Photoshop now so that you see what was done. So main image, struck that, and this mask that was rendered out. Now, for some reason, I'm getting some colors here the mask didn't completely isolate the glass. It's adding a few things here, but that's not the problem. I can just pick my brush, a black brush, and paint them over as black, because the only white I want in this scene is this area. So I'm going to close the layer, Control C, and so let's say I wanted to use curves. I'm going to come in here, unlock this, and Control V now. So what it has done now is that it has restricted every change I made to behind the glass. So if it was an exposure change, this is just affecting behind the glass. So now that I've done that, I'm able to get more detail here, reduce the exposure, whatever it is, on the things that are behind the glass and in the exterior. So that's a very good way to make adjustments to things outside your scene. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Okay. I'm guessing answered from just one person.
It does, but we will need more practice on this.
Yeah, of course. Of course, you know. But I'm sure it's good that you've seen it now, so you know it's even possible. And then you can try it on your own and see how it works also. Okay. So we have crossed the 12 o'clock mark already, and it's time for us to wrap up for today.